Another episode of the Successful Driver Podcast. Thank you so much for watching, listening, wherever you are consuming this content. We appreciate you. Real excited today to hear from a couple people out west of where I'm stationed here in Kansas City and Aero headquarters. It's Erika Rios, our branch manager in Fontana, and Pat Grant, the salesman in Fontana. Guys, thank you so much. Erika, I believe you are the first female branch manager in the history of Aero truck sales. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yay. I'm so proud to be that.
Yeah,
Yes.
we just need to get you a badge, a t-shirt, or like a banner behind you or something, because that's quite the accomplishment. Congratulations on that.
Thank
And
you.
thank you for spending a little bit of time with us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Pat, you've
Yes.
how long have you been here at Aero Truck Sales?
I'm on my 12th year.
12 years. I don't want to tell
12
you what I
years.
was up to 12 years ago. But we always kind of like to start with this. It's a question. We want to know a little bit about your industry background. You said 12 years.
Okay.
Pat, why don't you just kind of tell us your story in the truck driving industry, when you got in and what you've been up to.
Okay. I started in January of 2010. Don Fodiatis in Phoenix hired me. And I spent a total of about 10 years there before I transferred here to California. So,
Wow.
yeah, I started as a salesman. I was eventually an assistant branch manager, and then they eliminated that position. So I was the sales lead, and Erika was kind enough to invite me over here, and here I am.
So
Yeah, we're
you're
happy to have.
the entirety of your trucking career has been within Aero. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Oh, wow.
Correct.
Look at you. Hey, same here. All right, Erika, same question. Your history in the trucking industry, how you got started, all of that from Jump Street. Let's hear a little bit about your history here in the trucking industry and how you got to become the branch manager here at Fontana.
Wow. So my story goes a little further back. I started as a part-timer back in 1995 when I was still in my high school years. And then we'll just fast forward to back in the end of 99 when, I got my first shot at sales. And so I did sales for about, oh, geez. I've been in the industry for maybe over 20 years.
Wow.
So if that doesn't say my age. But over 20 years. So I started my career in sales in 1999, and I stayed with a Volvo Mac dealer here locally in Fontana, and did that for quite some time. I did transition into assistant used truck manager, but still slash sales. Never really got to the sales portion of it, and then eventually moved on and went and did some management for 2 other locations before I made my way into Aero. With Aero here, now going on 3 years come August, it's been quite the journey. I came in my first full year with Aero, I made a branch salesperson of the year. So that was pretty exciting. That was back in 2018. I was nominated in 2019 for the Women Trucking Association. So that was a lot of fun. And obviously, went into management with Aero, about almost 2 years ago. So
Wow.
It's been fun.
Yeah, first female branch manager in Aero
Yes.
truck sales
Yes,
history.
it's
That's just
exciting. It's really exciting to be part of that change here at Aero. Aero is such a great company to work for, and I'm just excited to be, leading that way for other females in the industry. It's possible.
no, that's awesome. Erika, we always ask this question, and we'll start with you on this one. It's something we've asked every single person that's come on this show, and we're going to ask it to you two today as well. And I'm interested to get both your perspectives, but we'll start with Erika. What makes a successful driver?
Successful driver. I think there's so many ways to measure that, but I think that if you're able to successfully get into a truck, make an honest living for your family, and then come home safely, I think that alone makes somebody pretty successful. If you can stay in this industry long term and make some money and be home get home safely, I think that in my mind that's a successful driver.
You kind of played the safety angle there, and I think that's something that
Yeah.
we've heard a couple times here, but that's an underrated piece of it. It's getting safely places is part of the battle for sure. And I think that's a good way, that's a good point to kind of think about there. All right, Pat, same question to you. What in your mind makes a successful driver?
Well, the owner operators that I've worked with that have become very successful all had a lot of common traits. One was they were very good money managers. They handled their finances very well. They maintained their equipment really well. They had really good organizational skills. They were very reliable in their industry. They're good communicators, and they all had real professional attitudes. So
I think those are a lot of great things, and we've heard them touched a lot. So
right.
I think that definitely resonates for sure. And there's some consistent trends, I think, with what we've heard. All right, your guys' role in the truck driver story, and Pat, I'll start with you. How are you today helping truck drivers find success out on the road?
Well, I think it starts with making sure you put them in the right equipment. The equipment needs to match the vocation they're involved in.
Yeah.
So that's very important. I think one of the biggest things we can do to help drivers today is to really advocate for extended warranty coverage. Trucks are complicated. Mechanics more than ever need certification, and trucks go down for a long period of time sometimes, and they're very expensive to repair. An engine, 15 or 20 years ago could be rebuilt for $8,000 or $10,000, and now that same motor is going to cost about $30,000 to repair. So I think that's one of the best things we can do for our customers is to help them protect their investment.
We'll be talking about those complicated engines here in a little bit, or those complicated pieces of equipment here in a little bit. But I want to ask Erika the same question here. Your role in the truck driver story, Erika. How are you helping truck drivers find success out there as the branch manager in our Fontana branch?
Well, I think I'm going to echo, Pat here a little bit, because I do think that, we do get a lot of customers that are first-time buyers in the industry. So being able to hear what brings them here to our branch, what their needs are, be able to like Pat said, put them in the right truck, based on their needs. I think that's important, and being able to guide them based on what they're doing, whether it's a portion plates, whether they're going to be driving local, out of interstate. I think it's important to just listen to the customer and maybe guide them in the right direction. But I do agree with Pat in the sense of, the thing that we can do best is help them protect their investment. I can't agree with him more. Things are just that much more expensive these days. And it's really hard when you bring in your hard-earned money and you put it in as a down payment and you're off to start this venture, right? You're going to become an owner operator. And before you know it, you forget that you're buying a piece of equipment that has the potential to break. And I think that can be very painful for some, even putting some people out of business at times. It's unfortunate. Here at Aero, we try to do our best to check these trucks and do everything we can to make sure that we're selling a good piece of equipment. But nonetheless, we're not here building them. And it's hard to tell what the maintenance might have been previous to the truck getting to us, right? So I think the best thing we can do is say, hey, you are buying a used piece of equipment. It does have the potential to break. The best thing you can do is protect that investment. That's correct.
I'm with you. There's a lot of sound business advice there, and I don't think it's just because it's not that just Aero offers protection. It's just that's the reality of these. It's not if, it's when a truck will break down. It's when. And
absolutely.
Yeah, and so like you said, we do what we can, but there's some realities about a used piece of equipment, and we don't try to run from them, but we also try to provide people what's valuable and what we can help them protect it with. So,
I agree. And you have to remember, a customer's excited. They want to get in the truck. They want to go out and make some money. It's their first venture out. And we're just as excited as they are. But nonetheless, I do think that there's a time to talk about the ugly, right? And the ugly can be the things that as salespeople, we can, tend to maybe not touch on. And I think that is the most important thing we can do for our customers, just be very blunt about the situation in a way where you can hopefully get them to say, hey, you're right. It's a lot of money coming out of pocket. Let me see what I can do to protect it. And I know sometimes we sound like we're just trying to sell stock products or warranties, but nonetheless, being that I started back in '99, going far back, we really didn't sell warranties back then. We dealt with mechanical issues, parts that you could just slap on, replace, and move on. I mean, geez, you asked me how long I've been in the industry, and I go back to where we were asking if you wanted spring suspension or air ride, right? That's how far back. And so seeing the technology evolve in the way that it has, I mean, it's almost silly not to.
Trucks have
I
got.
agree.
Oh, do you have more, Pat? Sorry, if you want to jump in here, by all means, my friend.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I just like to say that, the technology has advanced beyond reason in the last 10 years on these trucks, especially with the new emissions laws, and repairs are very expensive. So, and a lot of times we take just about every penny a guy's got sometimes to get him into a truck. So, I think it's imperative that we discuss that type of an issue with them, that, hey, this could keep you in business or put you out of business. So, Erica's right. That's something that we advocate for on every sale, and we're growing, and we're having a lot more success with it.
Sure. I mean, there's some drivers out there, seasoned drivers out there, that can look at certain issues with trucks and say, I got this. I can handle this. I can handle some of these things. And they're right. Some of these guys out on the road certainly can handle some of the issues that comes up. But right. I think there's just got to be some level of understanding of your own talents, your own abilities, your own skill sets, what you can and can't handle. And I think that kind of should probably
and your resources.
And your resources. And
if you don't have software, there's a lot of things you can't do. You can't sync replacement components to the ECM.
Right.
So
there's just, I mean, it's just every truck driver has to assess that situation for themselves and say, right, what can I do? What can I get away with doing? What level of confidence do I have in doing X, Y, and Z? And I think that should kind of determine how someone potentially, protects a truck, So I'm sure I'm sure I'm just speaking to the choir. I'm sure you guys kind of have the same kind of perspective. You're in it way more than I am all the time. But Pat, you must be a professional podcaster, because you kind of just transitioned us perfectly over to, some of the truck technology and the rules in the last 10 years and some of the stuff that has really drastically changed this trucking industry. And there's a lot of emissions laws nowadays, and California is, a driving factor in a lot of the, rules and stuff in place here in the trucking industry. And you all have some, more stringent restrictions and some, standards that have to be met. Out of California, what out in California with some of the laws and stuff, how much has that really changed the trucking industry out in that area of the country? Erika, we'll start with you.
I think it's changed tremendously. I mean, all this started back in '07. We call it '07 emissions when it all started. It's changed the way that the driver, sees the truck. When it first started, we went from more of a mechanical feature into the electric part of it, right? The software to be able to read all these components. I think that it was the transition itself was really hard for truck drivers, going from one end to the other, and then it being mandatory. That was the other thing. It wasn't an option back then. There was a deadline that needed to be met, and it was mandatory. And so it was having to reteach, I guess you can say, maybe, these drivers that have been doing this for a very long time, maybe set in their ways, going to this new technology and being able to understand, how it worked and why the trucks have it now.
Pat, same question.
Well, I think the most important thing that happened in California was they mandated that trucks without this equipment on it, the after treatment systems, had to be off the road, but in a certain amount of time, and that was a first for any type of a vehicle or any type of equipment. The federal government fell in and adopted the same mandates, but they didn't remove trucks from the road. Other states still allow trucks without diesel particulate filters or without SCR systems to operate. But in California, what was it, 2021, Erica, is when they were all removed this year?
So the end of 22, which is next year, that's really where every single truck has to be under the SCR. You know, the DEF is a requirement by then. The other thing that California has done is that it's kind of tied it into your registration. So there's a lot of customers already receiving notices saying that you're no longer allowed to register this vehicle because it's expiring. So it's definitely mandatory. And you know, like Pat said, it's a California thing. I mean, there are some states where you can still run without that system, but slowly but surely, you know, they're not manufacturing trucks any other way. So it's trickling down to every other state.
Well, yeah, I mean, you guys sell a lot of trucks out there in California, so a lot of these, restrictions that are established by one of the biggest states, maybe is it the biggest state in the United States? If it's not, it's one of them, and there's such a high populace, and so it affects everything all the way down. You're absolutely right. Do you think that there's been a lot of growing pains with these restrictions for the trucking industry? Has it been difficult for some people to adapt? Are some of these new restrictions and laws coming into effect here in the near future? Are you noticing some growing pains or some ways that it's affecting the trucking industry right now, Erica?
I think that a lot of the pain comes from, you know, the growing pains come from a more of a financial standpoint.
Hmm.
Um, you know, it was almost like a two-step system. We started with the DPF, and then eventually you needed to kind of transition into the DEF system. So it's been, you know, buy a truck, and then eventually you have to retire it and bring in another truck, and then everything that's tied to it. So everything I think boils down to money,
Sure.
you know, on in regards to repairs.
I was going to ask both of you kind of just, the most important things to know about DPF, SCR, these things. What do you think are the most important things to know? I mean, you just mentioned price. I think that's something that, these are expensive things that if something goes wrong, it's going to be more difficult to maintain. And, but what else do you think? And I'll start with you, Pat, on that.
Well, there's scheduled maintenance. The filter needs to be removed and put in a kiln occasionally. It also needs to be replaced occasionally. Sensors are sensitive. Drivers who are mechanically skilled can remove sensors, clean them up. The same with inlet and outlet NOx sensors can be cleaned up, and that helps with longevity of the component. But they're very complicated systems, and you can expect, not major repair, but a lot of small repair bills as a result of their function.
All right, Erica, same question.
I think the difficult part is understanding the way the system works, the functionality of it. There's so many sensors tied to the DPF and the SCR that I don't think that everybody has taken the time to maybe understand the function of it. You know, I think that the system has a bunch of sensors, and every sensor is there for a reason. For example, you have an inlet or an outlet sensor, but it's only there to measure what's going in, the soot level that's going in, going out, right? But the bad part is that when they're no longer doing their function, then it stops everything else from functioning. So I think it's all tied to learning the mechanical system.
I'll ask both of you this question before we get out of here. So you're working with a lot of, you're working with a lot of truck drivers, and you are working with units specifically to meet the standards that you have out there in California. Do you see a level of confidence in the truck buyer right now with all the newfound systems? What's your perspective on the industry as a whole, the driving community as a whole, with their response to all the restrictions and laws in place with California trucks specifically, and the trucks that you guys are selling?
Well, I think that just over the last 10-year period, everybody has accepted, these mandates,
Yeah.
um, and a lot of them are curious, and they've learned more about the systems, and they know what to expect when they come in to buy a truck.
Erica?
Yeah, I agree. I think that I don't want to say they've embraced it, you know,
Right.
you know, but I think that there's a comfort level now with the system. A lot of our buyers have already driven for at least a period of 2 years or more, so they become more familiar with the system. They've accepted the fact that this is the new norm in the trucking industry,
Mm-hmm.
and all we can do, again, going back to how do we help you protect yourself and prepare for what is now on a truck.
I think it's been a reflective, like some of the technological changes. It's reflective of the resiliency of the guys that are in guys and girls that are in, in those seats. Is just, the
Yeah,
fact that they've been able to adapt with, with rules, regulations, and technology required for these units. And I think that's something that's been very obviously reflected every time I talk to someone on the show. Is just, this is such a resilient market that we're part of, and it always shows up when we start talking about some of the stuff like this. Pat, Erica, thank you guys so much for spending a little bit of time with us here. Really appreciate both of you, giving us some of your time to talk about some of this stuff.
Thanks
thank
for
you,
having
Kent.
us.
Much appreciated.
Absolutely. Well, that is another episode of the Successful Driver Podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe on YouTube, your favorite podcast platform, Facebook, whatever, wherever you like it. Just let us know that you're watching. Feel free to reach out and engage with us on any of those platforms. Thank you all so much. We'll catch you later.